Good morning. I'm going to start on time, even if it's just one person. Good morning. Please introduce yourself in the chat box. Hey, friend. I can't hear you.
Hey, honey.
Hi.
I do not know how I got selected to moderate your room today.
That's amazing.
I was like, isn't that a coincidence?
Look at God. Okay, so I'm going to give you co-host privileges.
Okay, because I will be moderating your chat and everything for you today. So I'm glad I didn't present.
Yeah. That is so weird.
I know. I was like, when I went through to look at the list, I was like, now how they know to put me with Kendall? But I'm not complaining.
At all, ma'am.
I wanted to get this goodness.
Yeah. I'm hoping more people sign in, but
I just knew you were, well, they're not supposed to be in until
10. We start in 3 minutes.
Yeah, we do.
You know I'm starting on time.
As you should, because they have really been pushed.
Right.
As far as staying on time.
I hope.
And my computer just went dead, so I'm like, oh crap! Now I gotta work.
Girl, the internet here, because you know I'm still in my parents' house. The internet here is nothing to be admired.
I know. The way of the world right now.
Right. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Rachel. Everyone, hey, Jasmine. Everyone, please introduce yourself.
Good morning.
In the chat, and we're starting in 2 minutes. So once we start, if you wouldn't mind muting your mics, that would be great. And my friend Desiree is going to be the moderator for our presentation. She's like literally my friend. Like we like literally used to work together. She's the reason that I'm even doing this presentation.
And I appreciate you.
Oh, same. All right, so where are people coming from? I see Sheldon, Klein, Aldine. Go ahead, Aldine. Aldine is where I started lots of years ago. Yeah. I currently work in China. So, but obviously I'm stranded in the United States. So taking care of my mental health has been imperative. And I hope that everyone learned something actionable from this presentation. You all should have your own copy, right, of the materials. Okay. I made slight adjustments, but if you want, it's not going to be a lot of adjustments. I'm a former English teacher, so I noticed some grammar mistakes that I had to correct. All right. Oh, we got more people. Good morning, Tamika. Hey. Hello. Oh, I have multiple Tamikas. One from my hometown. Oh, it's 10:45.
Hello.
All right, I was gonna say it's
Hey.
10:45, Kendall.
All right, so we are going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. Desiree is going to be the moderator for today. So if you have any questions, just pop it in the chat. Okay. And I just want to start by saying good morning and thank you for attending my workshop. I'm so grateful for this opportunity with HAABSE. I think it's a really good thing that we're doing, supporting at the beginning of the year as we return to what will most certainly be a different year, but can still be a very productive year. So this presentation, this workshop is going to be about anxiety. How are we going to be able to work through the COVID-related anxiety that we're experiencing as school returns? And of course, we're going to touch on some anxiety related to the race relations that we're experiencing as well, because they're very much intertwined. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will get to those. And let me start my time. Yes. So I'm Kendall Tyson. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm a professional school counselor. I am starting my 13th year in education. Wow, it went by very quickly. I have held many positions in education as I've risen through the ranks, but currently I am the senior social emotional counselor at Dulwich College, Beijing. So yes, I work in China, but I'm kind of stranded here in the United States with everything that's happening, but trying to figure out the best way to grow through all of this transition, which is some of the stuff that I'm going to teach you today. And I work with adolescents, families, educators, anyone that is involved in the school community with helping our students grow and develop into wonderful people. So what are the objectives of today's presentation? If you are unaware, I'm going to, teach you briefly what anxiety is, help you to understand like how the coronavirus, COVID-19, and some of the current racial stuff that we've been experiencing has impacted individuals, students specifically. And we're gonna, most importantly, I'm gonna help build your skills, teach you skills that you can utilize if you are experiencing any of the symptoms that I explain when it comes to anxiety. And we're gonna talk briefly about strategies that you can implement not only in your classroom, but in your school community that's going to tend to the social and emotional needs of your students, because that's gonna be it's gonna be an imperative that we do, students and teachers, once we return to school quite quickly. So I always believe in doing a check-in. So I have this wheel here. It's what we call an emotion wheel, to help you kind of check in with yourself. I just want you to take a few seconds and ask yourself, how are you feeling right now? And if you aren't quite sure, this is just a good replica of what someone can use in the classroom to help our students and ourselves as educators begin to identify the emotions that we feel, put a name to what's happening on the inside of us if we're not quite sure. And once you can pinpoint how you're feeling, you have a better way of identifying strategies in which to help in that particular area. So right now, I'm feeling grateful for the opportunity to be able to sit and commune with you and share what I know. So what I want you to do is type in the chat, how are you feeling right now after you've done a check-in? You can use any of the words that accurately describe how you feel. How are you feeling? Oops, sorry. Fabulous. So we'll give that just a few more seconds. And again, this is a really good social emotional learning strategy that you can implement in your classrooms, in your schools, which is going to help build social emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence, begin with empathy. Once you can identify what you're feeling on the inside, like I said, that is a bridge toward helping to mitigate whatever symptoms do arise. And so we're gonna keep going. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Malcolm X. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And in my estimation, education doesn't necessarily just mean book work. Educating us about mental health and how we can better improve our holistic wellness is just as important as the academic knowledge that we acquire. Our mental and our physical wellness is going to help us be our best selves in an academic sense, and our students can really benefit from understanding how taking care of themselves is going to help them to be better students. So let's get into the meat of it. What is anxiety? The layman's term is it's a mental and physical reaction to a perceived threat. And once I kind of go over what it looks like what some of the descriptors are, you'll probably be like, oh, I've been anxious for a while now with everything that's happening. And I can attest, even as a professional, I've been anxious, being displaced, having to be in an environment that I'm not used to being in, not having my own space, not sure of what's going to be happening. Everything that we're experiencing as adults, you can magnify that and only imagine how our students are feeling with so much disruption that's happened. So what I would definitely say is right now, just give you some statistics, 40 million adults in the United States, 18 and older, are experiencing anxiety. But it's really dire that less than 40% receive support. And that can be for a variety of reasons, from lack of resources, lack of knowledge, lack of support. But the schools are a prime place to be able to provide what we call psychoeducation and the support for not just our students, but for our educators as well. So these are just a bit more statistics. Nearly 1 in 3 of adolescents, 13 to 18, experience an anxiety disorder, a diagnosable disorder. Now, and those are the ones that we just know about. There probably are a lot more students that are experiencing anxiety symptoms, but a lot of times it looks like bad behavior. So once we have a better understanding of what anxiety looks like and trauma looks like, we can better understand how to assist instead of some of the more traditional ways that we've handled bad behavior. And again, women are 60% more likely to experience anxiety than men are. And a lot of times women seek more help. So I think that would be a part of the reason that their prognoses are higher. But I believe that's changing. So, let's get into it. These are what right now we're dealing with: collective and complex trauma. What does that mean? Collective trauma is the fact that we're all experiencing these things at the same time, that we are having a shared experience of trauma. And complex trauma is the fact that we are experiencing more than one trauma. So not only do we have the coronavirus pandemic, we also have the racial injustice that we are having to live through as well. So these are, and being that you all have the presentations with you, I won't read verbatim everything, but I'll touch on specific things that I definitely want to point out. So especially with coronavirus, our routines were disrupted. The students missed a lot of milestones. They missed their friends. And we know that our kids they're relational at the developmental stage that they're at, and they do derive a lot of energy and support from their social group. So there's a lot of grief that comes along with no longer having the people that have been there for you to be able to see them and connect with them and touch them and talk to them like you're used to doing. And you add to that the grief of losing family members or knowing people that have lost family members. That's a compounded level of trauma that we're going to have to address as school returns. It's going to have to be one of the first things we address is how are we tending to the social emotional needs of not only our students, but our staff as well. Being a more mature and educated person does not inoculate you from experiencing trauma. And then you add to that the racial distress that we're all experiencing. That leads to vicarious trauma, meaning every time they would show something on the TV, we relive that experience. So that intensifies the type of trauma that we're experiencing, to hypervigilance, wanting to go and protest, wanting to make sure we protect ourselves, protect our family members, that constant checking in, that constant worry, that rumination of what if, that can really lead to some serious issues without the proper support. So moving, through that, this is what these are some of the symptoms that you can look for. This is a pretty common list, but the most important thing is that anxiety looks different for everyone. Symptoms are going to be different for everyone. So you'll have that impending sense of doom, like you're expecting just the floor to drop out from under you, right? Like something's just going to happen. You're not able to kind of rest easy knowing that we're good, right? So you're having that feeling of nervousness, restlessness, or that tense feeling. Your moods are fluctuating frequently. It's very difficult to feel a consistent sense of emotion. You have increased heart rate. So not only are there physical symptoms, what we call somatic symptoms, but you have psychological symptoms, brain fog. You can't focus. It's very difficult to sustain your focus, to think through things clearly and concentrate. Struggle with sleeping. You may have some gastrointestinal issues. And the biggest behavioral symptom is anxiety, is avoiding the thing that's triggering you. Some people may have panic attacks, and a lot of people with anxiety experience cognitive distortions or distorted ways of thinking, such as, trying to read the future, or what we call just black and white thinking, it's all or nothing. There are so many, I can't get into detail, but these are some common things to pay attention to. And if you notice that your routine has been really disrupted, you would benefit from seeking out a professional before it becomes a major issue. So in addition to what does anxiety look like, I think it's extremely important for me to expound upon what it looks like in the classroom. I don't believe in bad students. I believe in students that are dealing with intense situations that they don't necessarily have the coping skills to manage, right? So this is what mental health challenges can look like for a child in a classroom. And here's a really great quote by Carolyn Miller. Kids who seem oppositional are often overly anxious. So they're highly dysregulated. They're going to be struggling with being able to cope. They're not probably going to have as many positive coping skills in how to regulate their emotions and think through things. And if you have a student that is highly dysregulated, that is disruptive and things like that, they aren't in a place where they can manage themselves or that they can hear you and communicate with you clearly. They can't reason. Logic doesn't work when they're highly dysregulated and kind of a bit dysfunctional. You have to kind of do some things, create an environment that's going to help them to be able to self-regulate, that's going to help them to learn how to code, build their skills so that they can be a bit more successful with managing their emotions. So these are some things to pay attention to that may alert you to you have a child that's experiencing some mental health conditions. One of them is if they're frequently absent. We know that absence is an indicator that something is happening. We don't necessarily know what, but something, and that we need to pay attention to that. If you have a student that has been doing well, but I wouldn't even say suddenly, but you notice that there's a marked decrease in the way that they are being productive. Their grades are failing, they're not participating, they aren't speaking up as much. Pay attention to that. If they're espousing their intense worries and fears that are interfering with their daily activities in life, it inhibits them from being able to actively participate and engage. Severe mood swings, again, difficulty concentrating. And so a lot of what I'm saying sounds like ADHD. I work with a lot of ADHD students. And that's why I say that trauma very much mirrors attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And what we're experiencing is traumatic. So we really have to pay attention and educate ourselves on what does anxiety really look like? What does trauma really look like? And how are we going to help ameliorate those symptoms? So again, this isn't just about our students, but it's about our educators as well. How can mental health challenges impact educators? I used to be an educator. I mean, I'm still an educator. I'm a counselor. So I can say, and as a professional, I've dealt with anxiety myself, moment of self-disclosure. I've dealt with depression. I've dealt with the things that I help people overcome. So if that is you, just know that you're not alone and it's not a bleak situation. You're able to come out of it. We just have to be more proactive than reactive. And I think that's going to be the word going forward, is proactive. How are we putting systems and processes in place that are going to assess the needs of our students, meet the appropriate needs of our students and our staff, and follow up with their progress? And how are we going to have a school community geared toward safety and social emotional learning? So these are some ways that, and if I'm going too fast, I do apologize. These are some ways that mental health can impact educators. Burnout for sure. And what is burnout? It is having that level of cynicism about your job, not being motivated to do what you do, just really unable to provide the level of service that you once had because you're feeling, again, unmotivated, unappreciated, and a whole host of overworked, and a whole host of other things. So burnout is one of the major causes or symptoms from unchecked mental health. Diminished work performance, a lack of trust at work. And again, a lot of this stems from the community or the culture that your school has. So trouble asserting their needs, increased frustration, self-medication. I don't believe in sugarcoating it. When you struggle with managing, that we will find a way to manage. And frequent absences. People just don't show up. And I think that we can imagine someone in our head that if it's not us ourselves at some point, that may fit the profile. So then my question to you is, if an individual pops into your head when I mention these things, what are you prepared to do to assist them? Because we have to build a community that is not only educated about what mental health challenges can look like, but how do we also destigmatize mental illness and promote and advocate for seeking mental health, and do that in a loving, caring, and empathetic manner. So these are some ways in which, as educators, we can support our students' mental health needs. One of the biggest things, especially this is like counselor's wheelhouse, is we assess the needs of our students as they arrive. We do needs assessments at the beginning of the year, mid-year, end of year. I think it's extremely important to, instead of in our professional capacity thinking of what the things may be, we tend to know, but it's really important to know from the students and teachers first, what exactly are you struggling with, and then we can tailor a program that hopefully will better attend to the needs that you have. Education is key. It's what we call psychoeducation, teaching about the things that we are experiencing: anxiety, depression. What does ADHD look like? How can we support? What does trauma look like? How can we support? So hosting those events with parents and staff and kids to let them know this is what we're noticing and this is how we can best support. Promoting social emotional competency. We'll get into that in just a second, but we have to also teach the importance of resilience, and we have to embody what resilience looks like. We know that our students, they're great learners. They catch on things very quickly, but they learn best by seeing. So we have to provide the example of social emotional competence, emotion regulation, being resilient in the face of struggles, so that they can see that it's possible from people that they look up to. Encouraging good physical health, mental health, making sure that there's access to mental health support in the community and that we're promoting that. And I'll say this again, the school plays a great role in actively destigmatizing what mental illness is in our communities. And oh, there was one quote that I said at the bottom: affirmation instead of stigma. We know that we have students that struggle, and we as teachers and educators, we talk. So it's extremely important, especially if we don't know the backstory, that we affirm students instead of enhancing the stigma that they may already experience. It's very difficult to seek help from someone that you don't feel safe around. So this is just another quote that I really like. The walls of a school should reflect a future possibility. The hall should honor dreams, the rooms to help prepare for them. And I say, what are you doing to embody this? How does your school reflect possibility? How does your school honor dreams? You know, how does your school help prepare for them? And how do they do this in a mental health, from a mental health standpoint? How is empathy promoted? How is emotional regulation promoted? How is collaboration promoted? And the thing that keeps popping in my head is PBIS. It's an amazing program that you can definitely tailor to tend to these particular needs. How is the school promoting racial and social justice? So, promoting social and emotional learning, making sure to prioritize that. So what is it? And I'm going to read it verbatim. It's from castle.org, which is an amazing organization focused on social emotional learning. And it's a process through which children and adults understand and manage their emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy toward others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. This is literally, how do you develop into a functional adult that's able to connect and communicate with people, right? How are you building your level of self-awareness? How are you managing yourself so that you can better connect with the world outside of you? And we have to teach these skills not only to our students, but also to our staff. And having strong SEL skills is going to help our students increase their academic awareness. It's going to help them when it's time for them to be college ready. It's going to help them when it comes to closing achievement gaps, which that's the role of the professional school counselor and every other educator in the school. So this is just a diagram of what it's going to look like, where social emotional awareness is, the 5 spokes of it, that in the classroom, that's where you're doing your instruction. And then you have your school building that community, and you have the school-wide practices and policies, but it also extends to the community, because we know that our schools are community schools, and our community should definitely have a role in how we are building up our students. And this is just more information that goes, and I don't have the time to go deeper into it, but it just gives you, it clearly delineates under each spoke what it looks like and some of the things that you should be doing. This is a video that I have that I wish I had time to share, but I can definitely share this information once we're finished. And it's found on YouTube. It's at Lessons for SEL, and there's a lot of great information there. So let's get into how are we gonna move through anxiety. One of the best strategies is teaching relaxation strategies. Like, this is one of my favorite pictures of this young man. And it's done, there were schools that were beginning to minimize their suspension and have students doing more mindful practices, which is so important. Teaching them to be mindful is going to help them, especially with their emotion regulation and self-awareness, and able to kind of like mitigate those negative effects of being just overly stimulated. So these are some ways in which you can do this, and you can do this in classrooms. Breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, guided imagery. As a former English teacher, I used to use guided imagery to help students write that seemed a little bit more blocked. But teaching them about meditation and how do you ground yourself if you are feeling out of sorts. Coloring, I love to color. Reading, writing, journaling, partnering with your ancillaries, your art teachers to help them in any other kind of creative pursuits that are going to assist them with being able to relax. We have a wealth of opportunity to implement this particular strategy. So one that I want to show you is the 4 square breathing. And it's simply, you inhale through your nose, and you're gonna hold it. You don't wanna like strain, but you're gonna hold it for 4, and then you're gonna exhale out your mouth like you're blowing into a straw, and you're gonna extend that exhale. A lot of times we want the exhale to be longer because you wanna empty your lungs, and then you repeat that. And what that does is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the system that helps you to calm down. So this is a strategy that kids love. It's also called like belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. You want to breathe from your belly and not necessarily your chest. So your belly is going to expand and contract as you do inhale and exhale. But this is a great starter to be able to get kids to regulate their emotions, and educators as well. So physical activity. This is key. Once you get those endorphins running, those good emotions, those good chemicals, that's going to help you to regulate your emotions. When working with clients, one of the first things we have people do is we assess their level of activity. And we say, well, let's start to do things that are going to get you active. Running, yoga. I love to box. I do Muay Thai in China. Walking is something. Just get up and do at least 30 minutes of physical activity. And our kids do this too. Thank goodness for PE. But while they are not in the school, hopefully, how are we going to promote being active and not sitting in front of the screen all day, right? So it's a highly accessible way to mitigate against the negative effects of mental health. Staying connected to your support system. This improves your mental health. It's going to enhance that feeling of security and safety. It builds resilience. It's going to lead to improved self-esteem as well. I feel like I'm going really fast. Mind your mindset. The way that you think about a situation has to be changed. In practicing what we call radical acceptance, there are just certain things that we cannot control, right? But one thing we can control is how are we reacting to what it is that we're given? How are we going to use what's happening to grow from it? Are we advocating? Are we messaging the government? Are we communicating with our staff? Are we helping our kids to be more resilient and our teachers as well? And so I put this chart here, or this little graphic here, to kind of just give you a visual of control what you can, and that which you cannot. How do you change your attitude surrounding it? And how do you begin to explore your strengths as you are dealing with this? So seeking professional help. I'm a professional. It's really important. If you notice that you're like intensely worried all the time, your routines are greatly affected, you just can't seem to find a sense of normalcy, you're depressed, or you're having suicidal ideation, thoughts of harming yourself, you need to seek a professional. If you're having panic attacks every time you think about going outside, because at one point I did, you need to seek a professional. And there is nothing wrong with seeking professional help. And there are lots of resources that you can connect with that will help connect you to professionals in the city. And luckily, we're doing a lot of telehealth right now. So literally, you can work with any professional in the state of Texas. So here are some additional considerations. One of them is practicing gratitude, getting good sleep, drinking lots of water, eating healthy, and making self-care a priority for yourself. These are some additional things that are going to be really important when it comes to managing any mental health symptoms that you may be experiencing. And again, we teach children by what we do. When they see that you're doing something, it's easier for them to incorporate that into their own routine. So here are some ways in which you can reduce your COVID-related anxiety. Limit your time watching the news. That's one of the most effective ways to do it. If you have to watch the news, do it for an hour, 2 hours at the end of the day. But if you notice that you're beginning to get triggered, you might want to diminish the time that you're spending watching the news. Do your best to not worry about the things that you cannot control, which right now is a lot. You want to focus on being productive. You want to be easy with yourself, practicing that self-compassion, and doing your best to preserve a sense of normalcy, creating routines that are going to help you to stay, to meet the goals that you're looking to meet. And with our students, reassuring them that, things are being done to make sure that they are safe and healthy, which sometimes can be stressful because we don't know all the information surrounding it, right? But being prepared and showing them how prepared that we are being when it comes to going back to school and mitigating any unsafe situation. And most importantly, let your kids express how they feel without judgment, without derision. And listen, and you be honest, and you try to provide them the best support as possible. So literally everything that I'm sharing for students, it applies to adults as well. Find you that trusted person that you can, relate to and talk with. And if you don't have it, talk to a professional. So this time goes by very quickly. So these are some ways to support educators as they return to school. Promote self-care throughout your building. Promote social and emotional wellness. You want to provide space for educators to share their feelings as well. You want to be able to communicate transparently and clearly about what's happening and give them some ownership into some of the decisions that are being made. And you want to provide meaningful professional development about racial equity and social justice, and what we're doing to mitigate transmission of any coronavirus at the school. So I think that for them to be included and to understand what's happening is going to go a long way into managing whatever anxiety symptoms they may be experiencing. Now, we can't do that. We can't control how people feel, but we can, again, control like the role that we play and how we react. Another element is, and you know, as an educator, all of this deals with mental health, making sure that teachers and the whole education staff as a whole understand what a trauma-informed school system looks like and how it runs. It's very key that at the beginning of the year, you assess the level of trauma that your students have experienced and your educators as well, because that gives you a better place, a more accurate space to begin with support and resources. So teaching what trauma education looks like, teaching educators how to respond to students in a calm, understanding, empathetic manner that may be dysregulated. And as higher ups, understanding how to support educators that may be behaving in these particular types of manners as well. Teaching emotional regulation is going to be that's my bell, sorry. It's going to be extremely important when it comes to managing what's happening. Being culturally responsive is also key. And collaborating across systems is going to be something that we're going to have to do. So I went through that pretty quickly, but in conclusion, don't be afraid to have the challenging conversations. We have to consult, collaborate, communicate, and connect. Building relationships is going to be key. Being supportive is going to be key. Having a listening ear and having resources is going to be key. Collaboration is key. Providing psychoeducation. And as I've said, being proactive is going to be the most important thing that we can do to move forward. Let's identify what the struggles are, and let's provide resources that are going to specifically target the areas of concern. And consult and partner with your outside communities. That's why I'm here, right? To assist you in these efforts if you don't have it in-house. So we got to cooperate, communicate, collaborate, all of that. And if you have any questions, this is how you can reach me. It's in your packet, and I really do appreciate your time. And so now, questions. All right. That was a lot. Okay, Desiree. Let me see. Does anyone have any questions? You can mute your mic.
Really great information, Kendall. One thing I want to bring attention to is in the chat room, there are some good resources that people are sharing in the chat room for those who want to, look in, and they link some websites and things in there as well.
Awesome, awesome.
Everyone is really, I'm sure you're looking at your chat as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see the words passionate, overwhelmed. Y'all, I'm overwhelmed too. You're not by yourself. Excited.
So, Kendall.
Yes.
How do we, so for one, I'm very proud of you. Kendall and I are from the same hometown, so it's always a blessing just to see, everyone doing well, and then spreading that love back, giving knowledge and putting it out there.
Amen.
So very thankful for this. But I do ask, do you have any strategies for how we push each other as educators to not only engage in a dialogue, but truly push these measures? Have you ever worked with people, since you came from education, have you ever worked with educators who are trying to do that cultural shift? Because where we're struggling is we do not take time for ourselves.
Right.
We do not put the staff and the employee, and I'm coming from the administrator, I'm an assistant super.
Right.
So I'm coming from that we will work ourselves to the bone. We will say the right things, but not do the right things.
Right.
And how do you even shift that, especially if a person has done it 15, 20 years? It's almost ingrained in your brain. You know the
Right.
right thing to say and do, but people are struggling. They are overwhelmed. I'm grateful for today. So I meant my word. I'm grateful for today. But the reality is then you step away and Monday still comes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So what I would say is what we're saying right now is to have that open conversation, and you want to create the opportunity or create a space for people to share how they're feeling. So that can be in teacher small groups. We can do that in student small groups. And a lot of times you tend to get the same people that's doing the work because that's just like who we are. Like Desiree can definitely attest to that. So it is, I would say, having some teacher leaders that are going to be a part of that collaborative team that is building that program, building that resource for safe space, and letting them know this is what we've heard, what your concerns are, this is what we've put together, and this is how we'd like to implement it. And if you'd like to partner with us, these are the different ways in which you can assist. Because I think sometimes having been a teacher before, we don't want to engage in things because it's not well planned, or we weren't part of the planning, or it's a top-down thing. But once we're included in, I wouldn't say necessarily the final decision making, but the development of what it looks like, and you bring outside people to support, I think that you'll have greater engagement, because we can't do everything in-house. It just doesn't work like that all the time, because like you said, our time is limited, and we may not necessarily know the right things or the most appropriate things to say and share. So we know that we like quality professional development. So providing the opportunity to have people come in and talk about these very difficult and uncomfortable topics. And what I've learned over the years is, let's just say we are talking about racial injustice. How do we move to be a culturally competent school? That we do more small groups. People are afraid to share when it's all eyes on me, right? But if you can identify small pockets of ways in which to share information, and then you come back as a larger team, that may be a way in which to kind of move the needle along. But I would say you want to educate often and educate early. I hope that helps.
thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? We have a few more minutes.
I was going to say thank you for recommending the smaller groups, because amongst our teams, we have teacher leaders who are pushing for those conversations within teams. The only catch has been is like if someone is not comfortable sharing, or if they overshare how they're feeling, then they're targeted by I don't want to target, but admin has a spotlight on them that, wait, maybe this is too much for them. Like they've shared way too much, and they feel like, well, I was sharing, but I didn't
like you
mean
asked me to.
buy it. But yes, I am overwhelmed, and at times, it dictates that you go get that care you need so that you can be your best self for those kids.
So
I think that what you said,
Kendall,
you may not mean target, but that's how we feel.
Yeah.
Like when you want us to be outspoken, and I'm being honest, like I'm laying it all on the line, there has to be, when you are doing these groups, you have to set guidelines. And the guidelines have to be followed from everyone that's involved, because no one, when you have these small groups, there can't be a hierarchy. Everyone has to be on the same playing field and be able to share and gently confront. That's how you build community. Go ahead.
And we have to be prepared too. I'm glad you said, is it Miss Celestine?
Yes.
Because as the administrator, you can't jump out there leading a conversation that you're not prepared for what may come out. So you mentioned multiple times, let me call you Miss Tyson instead of Kendall, I'm being informed, that we need to have the support and help to guide these conversations, because I think what happens, at least what I've seen happens, is now the person trying to lead it is overwhelmed. And you don't know what to do, and that person doesn't know what to do. And so they'll try to shut it down. I allow the parking spot, I take the questions. I have a different approach, but I've seen some people, they get so overwhelmed that, and then some of them have been brought up, I'm just being honest. They've been brought up that when we push, because I'm a pusher, I ask questions. I'm trying to get us the help we need. And then it becomes, oh, well, that person is trouble. No, that person needs help. Typically the one that's reaching out, it's just like with your students. The one with the most questions, the one is either they need the most personal help, or they have people around them that they're trying to help.
Exactly. So creating that culture of support and genuine and honesty is extremely important. And knowing that one person is not going to have the solution to everything. So what I was going to say is you cannot take it personal. If we are opening up these spaces to be honest, you have to hear not with the intent to respond, but with the intent to understand and empathize. And so then we can collectively do some work surrounding mental health, surrounding social justice, because let's just be honest, I've worked in a Title I school my entire career by choice. And the issues that they face are a microcosm of what the world is looking like right now. And there's going to be a lot more people coming into the fold that are struggling in these areas. So it's going to be like, how do we separate ourselves from the work that we need to do and know that we're going to be uncomfortable and we have to take it. And like you said, if you have that person that's pushing and pushing and pushing, that right there warrants having a one-on-one conversation to really get to the root of what's happening. These are good questions.
Great questions, Kendall. And I just want to throw in really quick how we did at our campus, Kendall. Remember, we started because I know when we get in those small groups, like you were saying, it's better to do small groups because a lot of people won't share out if it's a large group. When we started the small groups, administrators were not a part of the small groups at first. Remember, we built that culture of getting staff to talk and voice and get vocal. And then once they got comfortable, then we moved to the next level of inviting admin into those circles to have those conversations. So that's just another idea for admin to think about as well, to train teacher leaders to guide and facilitate those small groups first to build a culture and then bring in admin so for the safe space. But it just depends on the culture of the campus.
Right, and you can do that with kids and students because Desiree will know. I started this program, a social emotional program called Becoming Better Students for some of our most behaviorally challenged kids that are thriving right now. And it's a whole community effort. So the whole framework can also be generalized to educators as well. And just visit my website. I know it's time to go.
And I was going to say, can you put your information back up on the screen so everybody can see it? And then everybody, before when we log off here, click the link to return back to the main conference room because they're giving away prizes and we get to hear the keynote speaker.
Can y'all see it? Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry.
Not yet.
There it is. Y'all, like, I need to grow technology-wise. So this is how you can reach me. I welcome questions. I'm an educator wellness coach. I do groups. I do lots of things mental health-wise. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. And I don't want you to stop missing the keynote speaker. So thank you all for participating and for your great questions.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Desiree.
Or Miss Tyson, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Tamika.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye.
Great.
All right.